Most people think sexual discipline is built through force, rules, suppression, willpower, battles fought in silence. That assumption is wrong. True sexual discipline is not forged through pressure, it is forged through space. And solitude, when understood correctly, creates that space. In a world saturated with stimulation, availability, and noise, solitude removes the constant friction between impulse and restraint. It strips away external triggers and reveals something most people never encounter: the raw mechanics of their desire. This video is not about denial. It is not about moral superiority or abstinence as performance. It is about how solitude, deliberate, structured, and conscious, became the training ground where sexual discipline stopped being a struggle and became a natural state. What follows is not theory. It is observation. It is pattern recognition. And it is a process that anyone can understand, if they are willing to be still long enough to see clearly. Sexual impulse does not exist in isolation. It is amplified, or weakened, by environment. When a person is constantly surrounded by stimulation, screens, conversations, images, social validation, the nervous system never settles. Desire becomes reactive rather than intentional. It fires not because something is needed, but because something was presented. Solitude interrupts this loop. In solitude, there are no cues demanding response. No eyes watching. No performance to maintain. No comparison running quietly in the background. What remains is the body and the mind, operating without external interference. This is where most people become uncomfortable. Not because solitude creates desire, but because it exposes it without disguise. Without distraction, patterns become visible. When desire actually arises. How long it lasts. What thoughts intensify it. What conditions dissolve it. This clarity is the first foundation of discipline. Discipline does not begin with resistance. It begins with recognition. In solitude, you learn that many urges are not demands, they are signals. Temporary waves of energy that rise, peak, and fall when not fed by stimulation or imagination. The person who never sits alone believes every impulse requires action. The person who has spent time in solitude knows otherwise. Solitude teaches timing. It teaches patience without effort. It teaches that control is not something you apply. It is something that emerges when unnecessary inputs are removed. This is why solitude strengthens sexual discipline without force. Not by suppressing desire, but by letting it reveal its true scale. Most urges feel overwhelming only because they are constantly reinforced. Remove the reinforcement, and the body recalibrates. By the end of this stage, something subtle but profound happens. You stop fearing your impulses. And what you no longer fear, you no longer obey blindly. That is where discipline quietly begins. Once solitude removes the noise, something unexpected happens. Desire stops shouting. It doesn't disappear, but it changes posture. Instead of arriving as an order that demands immediate action, it arrives as a sensation that can be observed. This shift is subtle, but it is the exact point where sexual discipline stops being reactive and becomes conscious. Most people experience desire as identity. I want becomes I must. Solitude breaks this fusion. In quiet, uninterrupted space, desire is no longer merged with social expectation, fantasy loops, or external validation. It becomes a physical and psychological event, something that happens within you, not something that defines you. This separation matters. Because the moment desire is seen as an event, it loses authority. In solitude, you begin to notice. Desire rises in predictable patterns. It intensifies when the mind starts narrating. It weakens when attention returns to the body or breath. It passes when not continuously stimulated. These observations create distance. And distance creates choice. This is where many misunderstand discipline. They believe discipline means crushing desire. In reality, discipline means not collapsing into it. Solitude trains this capacity naturally. There is no audience, no reward, no immediate outlet. The nervous system learns that arousal does not equal action. And nothing bad happens when action is delayed. This rewires expectation. The body stops panicking for release. The mind stops dramatizing sensation. Desire becomes informative instead of urgent. You start recognizing the difference between genuine biological energy, emotional compensation, habitual stimulation seeking. This discernment is impossible in constant social or digital environments. There is too much interference. But in solitude, the signal becomes clean. And when desire is cleanly perceived, it can be directed rather than obeyed. At this stage, sexual discipline no longer feels like restraint. It feels like composure. You are not suppressing energy, you are holding it without tension. This is the quiet mastery most people never reach, because they never slow down enough to see desire clearly. Solitude does not weaken sexuality. It refines it. And refinement is the precursor to control. By now, the early lessons of solitude are clear. It removes noise and allows desire to be observed. But the deeper transformation occurs at the level of the nervous system itself. Constant stimulation keeps the nervous system in a semi-permanent state of arousal. Signals of desire, stress, or anxiety get tangled together, and impulses feel urgent and uncontrollable. Solitude interrupts this cycle. When you spend extended periods alone, without distractions, the nervous system begins to self-regulate. Heart rate, attention, and energy flow settle into natural rhythms. You start noticing patterns you never could before. Certain thoughts trigger tension, not desire. Energy rises and falls in waves independent of external cues. Impulses are momentary, not commanding. This recalibration creates autonomy. Your body no longer reacts reflexively to every trigger. Desire is no longer an external force, it becomes an internal phenomenon that can be observed, timed, and integrated. Interestingly, the nervous system thrives on structure. Solitude provides a consistent, predictable environment where the mind can explore energy without distraction. Over time, this rewiring makes restraint effortless. By the third stage, what was once struggle begins to feel like natural flow. Resisting urges is no longer a battle because the system itself has learned. Not every signal requires action, and not every energy spike is dangerous. At this level, discipline becomes embodied, not just conceptual. It's no longer about saying no or using willpower, it's about living in alignment with your own energy cycles. In solitude, the body and mind quietly learn the most important principle of sexual discipline. Control emerges from clarity, not force. By now, solitude has cleared the noise and given you clarity over desire. But the next step is subtle, learning where to place your energy. Sexual energy is potent. Left unmanaged, it often disperses in unconscious habits, compulsive behaviors, or endless stimulation loops. Solitude creates the space to observe its flow without interference, giving you the ability to redirect it consciously. In practical terms, this means recognizing when energy arises and how it manifests physically. Choosing not to act impulsively, but instead channeling it into productive or creative outlets. Understanding that restraint itself is not a void, but a redirection of force. The transformation here is profound. The same energy that once demanded release can now fuel focus, creativity, or deeper self-connection. You begin to notice patterns. Certain triggers no longer provoke reaction. Energy can be delayed without tension. Focus and attention grow sharper when impulses are integrated rather than suppressed. This chapter of solitude is not about denial, it's about mastery. By intentionally guiding energy, you experience less internal friction, more presence, and a deeper connection with yourself. Most people try to build discipline by sheer will. Solitude shows you a smarter path. Discipline arises naturally when energy has direction, not when it is forcibly blocked. In essence, solitude converts sexual energy from a source of distraction into a tool for internal strength. It teaches patience, focus, and the quiet satisfaction of aligned action. By this stage, you have clarity and the ability to direct energy. The next lesson of solitude is deeper. It teaches you to distinguish between fleeting desire and true, enduring drive. Most people confuse the two. A sudden sexual impulse feels urgent and important, and the mind treats it as a command. But in solitude, these impulses can be observed without distraction or immediate response. Here's what begins to emerge. 1. Temporary desire, a passing wave of sensation or thought. Loud in the moment, but brief and often triggered by external cues or habitual patterns. 2. Enduring drive, a sustained, internal energy that aligns with personal goals, creativity, and self-mastery. It doesn't scream for release, it flows purposefully and quietly. Solitude trains the ability to wait without panic, to witness urges without collapsing into them. In the absence of external reinforcement, temporary desires naturally fade. This teaches the nervous system a subtle truth. Not every sensation is a command. Once this distinction becomes clear, your actions are no longer reactionary. You start to make decisions from a place of true drive, not compulsion. This creates a remarkable freedom. You respond with intention, not instinct. You conserve energy for what matters most. You cultivate patience, knowing the body's impulses are temporary. The power of solitude here is twofold. It exposes illusion, and it strengthens self-trust. By observing desire without judgment, you internalize a deeper principle of sexual discipline. Control is not the absence of desire, but the presence of understanding. At this stage, discipline is no longer external or forced. It becomes a natural byproduct of awareness, quietly shaping choices without effort. By now, you can observe desire and distinguish fleeting impulses from enduring drive. Solitude takes the next step. It begins to reshape habits and ingrain consistency in behavior. Habits, especially those related to sexual energy, are often automatic, built over years of unconscious repetition. Constant stimulation and social distractions reinforce them, making change difficult. Solitude interrupts this cycle. Without external triggers, the mind begins to notice patterns in action and reaction. When urges appear, what routines escalate them? How past habits dictate automatic responses? This awareness alone starts breaking old patterns. But solitude does more. It provides space to experiment with new habits in a low-pressure environment. For example, instead of reaching for immediate gratification, you can redirect energy into movement, creative work, or meditation. You can practice delaying response without judgment. You can test different ways to channel desire and observe the effect on focus, mood, and productivity. The beauty of solitude is consistency. Repeated exposure to your own impulses, without interference, rewires your nervous system to respond predictably. Over time, old compulsive behaviors weaken naturally. New, conscious behaviors strengthen automatically. Discipline shifts from a mental effort to a pattern ingrained in daily life. At this stage, sexual discipline is no longer fragile. It is built into the rhythm of your habits. You no longer need constant reminders or willpower. The system itself guides your actions. Solitude has transformed the struggle into flow, making consistency effortless. By this point, solitude has given you clarity, control, and consistent habits. The next, more subtle stage is the cultivation of internal authority, the quiet confidence that you can govern your impulses without external oversight. Most people rely on rules, routines, or social accountability to maintain discipline. Solitude removes these supports, leaving you with only yourself. This is where true authority is forged. In the absence of distraction and external validation, you begin to notice. Your impulses are predictable and manageable. Your choices do not require force. They require observation and intention. You can trust yourself to act from alignment rather than compulsion. This trust is foundational. Without it, discipline feels like an endless battle, and willpower becomes exhausting. But through repeated solitary practice, self-trust strengthens naturally. You learn that saying no to temporary desire is not a struggle, it is a natural outcome of awareness. Your judgments about when and how to act are reliable. Energy can be held, redirected, and expressed consciously without fear of loss or collapse. Internal authority also reshapes your relationship with sexuality. Instead of feeling controlled by urges, you occupy the role of guide, observing them, understanding them, and integrating them into your life purposefully. At this stage, discipline becomes effortless because it is no longer external. It emerges from the alignment of awareness, choice, and action. Solitude doesn't just remove noise or teach patience. It cultivates a quiet sovereignty over your own system, a self-command that is more effective than any external rule. By now, sexual discipline in solitude is no longer a struggle, it's becoming a natural state. The next dimension to develop is emotional resilience. Desire is not purely physical. It is deeply entangled with emotion. Anxiety, boredom, frustration, and restlessness often masquerade as sexual impulse. In constant social or digital environments, these emotions are amplified and acted upon reflexively. Solitude exposes them. In the quiet, you begin to feel your emotions without distraction. Irritation arises, then passes. Restlessness appears, then subsides. Longing or craving surfaces, then dissolves. This repeated observation trains the nervous system to remain steady amidst internal fluctuations. You start noticing. Emotional reactions are signals, not commands. You can respond rather than react. Inner turbulence does not require immediate action. As emotional resilience grows, sexual discipline becomes easier. The body's urges no longer provoke panic, and the mind no longer dramatizes sensation. Energy that once felt uncontrollable can now be observed, regulated, and integrated. The connection between solitude and resilience is subtle but profound. Solitude teaches patience. It teaches endurance without external validation. It teaches that inner stability is possible even in the presence of strong impulses. By strengthening emotional resilience, you are no longer dependent on avoidance or suppression. Discipline emerges not from fear or restriction, but from calm mastery of both body and mind. By this stage, sexual discipline, internal authority, and emotional resilience are established. Solitude now allows you to harness sexual energy as a creative force rather than a compulsive release. Sexual energy is one of the most potent forms of life force. Left unmanaged, it dissipates into habitual patterns or fleeting gratification. Solitude provides the space to redirect this energy intentionally, converting it into focus, productivity, and creative expression. You begin to notice that energy rises predictably and can be timed. Focus and concentration intensify when impulses are channeled. Ideas, creativity, and work benefit from the redirected flow. The transformation is both subtle and powerful. The same force that once demanded immediate expression now becomes a source of personal growth and accomplishment. Solitude teaches a key principle. Energy is not lost when it is held, it is multiplied when it is directed. Over time, discipline and focus become intertwined with creativity. Projects are completed with more clarity, thoughts flow with more depth, and your sense of purpose strengthens. At this stage, sexual discipline is no longer merely about restraint, it is about integration. Desire becomes a tool, an ally, a source of vitality rather than a source of conflict. This is the culmination of the work. Discipline, clarity, and patience converge, transforming energy into power that manifests in all areas of life. After all the stages, clarity, observation, nervous system recalibration, habit restructuring, emotional resilience, and creative redirection, solitude delivers its final lesson, integration. Discipline is not a temporary state. It becomes sustainable only when it is embedded into your daily life, not as a forced rule, but as a natural rhythm. Solitude teaches you how to live in alignment with your energy, your impulses, and your goals. At this stage, you notice your actions are intentional, not reactive. Energy is naturally directed toward what matters most. Sexual impulses no longer feel like obstacles, but like information guiding self-mastery. Patience, focus, and creativity become second nature. This is the ultimate form of sexual discipline, effortless, embodied, and integrated. It no longer relies on external rules, social pressure, or sheer willpower. It emerges from the quiet understanding that your impulses, emotions, and energy are part of a coherent system, one you can navigate with calm authority. Solitude, once feared as loneliness, is now recognized as the training ground of mastery. It strengthens not only sexual discipline but also self-trust, focus, and personal power. When practiced consistently, it transforms discipline from a struggle into a way of being, a rhythm that supports both personal growth and fulfillment. Sexual discipline is not built through force. It is cultivated through awareness, solitude, and consistent practice. By stepping back, observing yourself, and allowing clarity to emerge, you transform impulses into energy, discipline into habit, and desire into power. If this video resonated with you, take one step today. Allow yourself moments of intentional solitude. Observe, reflect, and channel your energy without judgment. For more insights into self-mastery, energy, and practical growth, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and join the conversation in the comments. Share your experiences, your challenges, and your breakthroughs, because mastery is not just learned, it is lived.